All right, well, my editing skills are crap, but can the same thing be said about the premiere of Heroes Reborn on NBC? Stick around and find out. Bonus points if you know that theme. Or at least what it's supposed to be. All right, I'm Peter Franson from ChristianGeekCentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions, here with my uncut review of Heroes Reborn, I was going to say pilot episode. It's really two episodes that they kind of broadcasted, I think, on the same night. I watched them on the NBC website. So, in this story, 4 years I think, have passed since the events of the original series, and they start out by doing a flashback to a year ago from the present time of the story, in which there was a terrorist attack in Odessa, Texas, that left the city decimated. It was supposed to be this kind of rally to bring together Evos, which are superhumans in this world, which have become much, much more public, and everyone is aware of them now, kind of like mutants, and that won't be the first time I make that comparison. And this was going to be this big rally to kind of like, that was going to be a symbol of peace between normal humans and Evos, and there was a massive bombing there, and I don't know how many thousands, were killed, and the Evos now are blamed for this tragic event, and they're now in hiding or on the run from those that are out to get them. Now, I loved the first season of Heroes, like many people did, and like many people, I experienced a steady decline in my enjoyment after that. It became the Peter Petrelli show or the Siler show. They just kind of got way too much focus on these, fan favorite characters, and they would introduce new characters instead of deepening existing ones. Which was another problem. It was really kind of strange because it would either be like all Peter Petrelli and all Siler and kind of doing things with their characters, I guess, especially Siler. As far as character growth, Peter Petrelli just did lots of stuff. I don't know that there was a whole lot of character transformation that I recall. But they would introduce new characters instead of deepening existing characters. And that was a real shame, because I really like character-driven stories. And I think with a series like Heroes, especially looking at the first season, there was tremendous potential there for it to be a very character-driven series, but it definitely did not go that way in the long run. And then you also had power creep, and power creep is kind of where, one thing that writers will do to try to make things more interesting is make their characters more powerful, and then more powerful to, okay, now they're, anyway. So we had like normal people like Suresh getting abilities, that had been normal for most of the series, and then, of course, powers going public, I think, to some degree, and they were being hunted down by people, and it became more of like a political conflict than a personal conflict that was driving the story, which is a real shame. The setting now in this series, as we pick up, it feels like X-Men, and maybe if you're pining for an X-Men TV series, this will kind of scratch that itch for you. But I kind of feel like I've seen this device used. I've seen, like, okay, we've got these people that just kind of like manifest these abilities for no apparent reason. It just happens. It's a mutation or whatever, and then we're getting like this kind of political division between them, and fear, and what's the government going to do, and should we have them register. They talk about Evos having to register potentially in this. They use an expression at one point like that's the expression "coming out," which obviously is going to have ties to the lesbian and gay community, and all that stuff has been done before in the X-Men franchise. And so I feel like this isn't something new. This isn't something really compelling. I'm not saying that like political metaphors and stuff like that can't be useful. I just feel like, they're not doing it this way. It's just echoing the same thing the X-Men movies are doing. It's not stimulating conversation or thought about those issues anymore. It's just kind of hitting that same drum. And if they wanted to be political, I wish they would at least try to find a way to make it feel political and and issue oriented in a way that didn't feel so much like X-Men. And really, my actual preference would be that it's not really a political thing, and it's more a personal one about people dealing with the fact that, oh my gosh, I have these abilities. What does this mean? Am I even human anymore? Having these issues of doubt and insecurity and all kinds of issues. There's all kinds of psychological issues that I think could be brought up by a person suddenly discovering I have the ability to kill a person by will alone. You know, there's all kinds of psychological ramifications for that the old series had never went into, and I don't think this series is going to either. The dialogue often sounds very artificial and concerned with hitting plot points, even just the plot points in a scene. Like, okay, we got to hit A, B, and C in this scene, and then the scene can be over, you know? So it's like exposition over revealing relatable characters. That's what I sensed in the dialogue. I didn't even know that two characters traveling together for the entire first episode were married until one of them said that they were in dialogue in the second episode. I thought they were introduced as having the same last name, and one of them was African American, and so, but the thought that came into my mind was, she, one of them must be adopted. You know, they obviously are siblings. It didn't even occur to me because there just wasn't, I don't think, effort being put into creating a sense of chemistry between the two. And if there was dialogue that established the fact that they're married before then, I totally missed it. It just wasn't obvious in what was going on there. And you could make arguments that, like, one of them is more driven, or they're just not the circumstances they're in would mean that they're going to be a little cold and not warm toward each other like a married couple might be. But even so, I just thought it was strange that, you had to tell me that you were married in the dialogue in order for me to know that you are married. The episodes jump around to different characters and their subplots, much like they did in the original series. But all these subplots and character pairings and groups and stuff are so numerous and so separated that numerous especially is the problem, that there's very little time for anything to happen in them. I could kind of sense where some of them were going, and I'm like, okay, I see where this is going. Can we get there? Because I want to see what that's going to do to the character, how they're going to react, what it's going to say about them, and how it's going to make me maybe feel for them in this situation. But just the pacing, to get to those points in each one of these numerous little stories, way too slow. I think that these 2 episodes should have been 1 episode. I think they should have cut out at least 2 of these subplots and just focused on maybe 2 or 3 max. So the pilot ended up being a bunch of just kind of little things happening to people. Oh, look at all these people, and they're doing things. But I felt no reason to care about any of them, except for the character Noah Bennett, who returns from the original series, who I care about because of his history in the original series and his the whole father-daughter story they had going on with him in the original series was great. It was great, and he was such a complex character that I was so glad to see him return. And it's only his history that made me care about him more than the others I felt in this one. He didn't have much opportunity to really get into who he was as a person in this episode. And so I feel like complete newcomers to this may feel like they're missing out a lot. Both in terms of who the characters are, Noah Bennett in particular, and the setting, and I don't feel like it's a good jumping on point. It's the story is not the clean reboot that I really think it probably should have been, both for my tastes and also possibly for the success of the show. I don't know show business, so I couldn't tell you if strategically that was a bad move or not. But it does not feel like a clean start. So the cast. The cast is filled with a bunch of actors that offer adequate performances. There are no standouts in this cast in these first 2 episodes. And I should say that even Jack Coleman as Noah Bennett and Zachary Levi, who you might know from Chuck, who comes back, and he's one of the 2 of that married couple I mentioned. Zachary Levi's character had really powerful motivation, but he didn't have much opportunity to really help me care and help me feel that motivation along with him, apart from the first bit of dialogue where he introduces that motivation and talks about his tragic history a little bit. Although these are the 2 performers that I would come back for if I cared enough about this show to do that, and I don't. So, which you can probably tell by this point. The visual effects and stuff are standard TV budget looking, nothing great, but if that doesn't bother you, then awesome. So is there anything of like philosophical, moral, or spiritual relevance going on in the themes of this premiere that might stimulate worthwhile thought or conversation? Maybe. I mean, I don't think at this point they're really going for it, or if they are, they're using such tired themes, like, that they're not really like standing out to me. So just a couple that jumped out to me, I guess, as I was looking for that kind of thing. They did momentarily perpetuate the stereotype that religious people like to carry picket signs and talk about who God hates on them in public places. But at the same time, they also had in the story a meeting to help superhumans, which took place in a church with a cross lit prominently out in the front. So I felt like there was a little bit of balance there in terms of their portrayal of religious folk or whatever. And so I appreciated that. The term EVOs used for superhumans is interesting because it specifically appeals to evolution, and I think in an indirect way the idea that natural unguided evolution occasionally results in sudden dramatic bursts of astonishingly favorable yet completely random mutations. And this is where some macroevolutionists go to explain how all life on Earth could come about naturally and unguided in such a relatively short period of time. And so for all these really super duper convenient mutations to happen in such massive bursts, in big clumps, across the history of the planet, is a little, it's not a view I subscribe to. I think it works good for comic book stories, but not much else. The original series had a tendency also to spout empty slogans that come from kind of like pop spirituality, I would call it. And this show may be heading in that same direction. In a confession scene, like the Catholic confession variety, a person tells his priest that he says, I'm not willingly kneeling here. There's just nowhere to sit in this booth. And the priest replies by saying, well, I'm more concerned with your faith in yourself than your faith in God. That was really interesting to me. Now, I'm not Catholic, so I don't know if this would be typical, but the Bible doesn't line up with this kind of self-help, love yourself first, kind of spirituality. Ephesians chapter 2, verses 8 through 10 in the ESV says, "For by grace you have been saved through faith. And this is not your own doing, it is the gift of God, not a result of works, so that no one may boast. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them." So biblical faith is not about having confidence in our potential and how great we can be and having faith in ourselves, but having faith that God is actually able to use us for good despite our weakness, despite our repeated failings. And he's inviting us into a life of purpose that he equips us for, even in the midst of our weakness. Philippians 4, verses 12 through 13, again in the ESV, Paul says, "I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound. In any and every circumstance, I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need." His solution, he says, "I can do all things through him who strengthens me." So despite Paul's weakness, despite the various circumstances he might find himself in, Paul did amazing things, but it was in the midst of weakness, in the midst of a thorn in his flesh, as he called it. He was able to do all these things through Christ, who gave him strength, who equipped him, who prepared him, who set up life around him in a way that he would be prepared to do those good things that he was able to do. So if I were because since I have no idea what your preferences are, if I were to travel back in time and talk to myself, I would say, okay, Peter, skip this, skip it. Oh, bummer, skip it. Man, the commercials I had to sit through this on NBC, I wouldn't even risk watching a single commercial. Like, maybe I could try Hulu, see if there's fewer commercials, watching it on Hulu sometime, but I wouldn't even sit through a single commercial to watch this show at this point. So I would just say, Peter, freaking skip it. Really? They're going to ask you to watch commercials? What? So if you hear rave reviews, Peter, then maybe check it out. But you only have time. You only have time for amazing shows with no commercials. you don't have time for good shows or even great shows, and this is neither for your tastes. I give it a quality score of 6.5 out of 10. That's a D, so it's not a complete failure. Pretty darn close. And then a relevant score of 7 out of 10, so that's about a C. It's kind of average. Maybe there's some stuff there if you're really looking for it. So those are my thoughts. I'd love to get yours in the comments below. Check out the Extra Life video on this channel. I'd love to have you involved in that event that we're participating in the coming weeks, coming up at the very first part of November. You can also support this channel by visiting spiritblade.com and checking out the stuff that we have for you there. Please do like, share, subscribe, all that jazz. If you like this video, want to share it, and want more videos like it, that would be helpful to me. And then I hope you visit ChristianGeekCentral.com, boom, for a ton more community and content, and join us there as we continue to geek out and seek the truth. Man, I never have this button ready to click when I should.